It's just a chair. You can stand. My dad said it quietly, almost offhand, like he was commenting on the weather. But 53 people were in that room, and the acoustics in the Harrow Estate ballroom carry. 6 weeks after reconstructive ankle surgery, at a party I planned, coordinated, and paid for, down to the last hydrangea centerpiece. I was standing at the head table in a navy dress that hid the swelling in my calf and a walking boot that absolutely did not. One crutch under my right arm, my left ankle throbbing in that deep, steady way that reminds you metal screws are holding your bones together. And a woman I'd known for exactly 23 minutes was lowering herself into my seat. Her name was Tiffany. She'd been dating my brother for 2 weeks. There were 8 place cards at the head table, 8 chairs. I'd arranged them myself while sitting on my couch with my leg propped up on 3 pillows, laptop balanced against a heating pad. Mom, Dad, Brent, me, Aunt Donna, Uncle Ray, Great Aunt Ruthie, Cousin Ellen. 8. Tiffany made 9. My mother did the math in under 3 seconds. She turned to me with that tight, polished smile, the one she uses when she's about to ask me to make myself smaller. "Honey," she said softly, "can you let Tiffany sit here? She's our guest." I kept my voice even. "Mom, I just had surgery. I can't stand for 3 hours." "There are chairs along the wall," she replied. Along the wall meant 15 feet away, folding chairs against gray cinder block, nowhere near the head table, nowhere near the family photos displayed in silver frames, nowhere near the cake I spent an hour discussing with the bakery because she didn't like the shade of ivory in the frosting sample. "I organized this entire party," I said. "I'm sitting here." My dad stood up. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't slam anything, he just looked at me with that calm, certain expression he's always had, the one that treats disagreement as a misunderstanding. "It's just a chair. Don't make a scene." Not dramatic. That came later, in my head, the way I always replay things. What he actually said was, "Don't make a scene." The room didn't go still like a movie. Most people were mid-conversation, mid-bite. A few near us paused. Aunt Donna glanced over. The catering staff moved between tables, oblivious. I felt heat rise in my neck. My ankle pulse harder as I shifted my weight onto the crutch. I could have argued. I could have asked someone to bring another chair. Instead, I did what I've spent most of my adult life doing. I stepped aside. Not gracefully. I bumped the edge of the table with my boot, trying to turn, and my mother winced at the noise. I made my way to the wall. The folding chair was cold metal and too low, and when I finally sat, the relief in my ankle almost made me cry, not from sadness, just from the sheer physical release of no longer bearing weight. From there, I had a clear view of the head table. My place card had been pushed to the side to make room for a breadbasket. Tiffany adjusted her napkin and leaned over to say something to Brent that made him laugh. My mother poured wine. My father cut into a steak. I sat against a cinder block wall with a folding chair denting the back of my thighs, my ankle on fire, watching a party I had built from scratch. And I thought about the bank statement sitting in my email inbox. The one Rachel had sent me 3 days ago. The one with 4 highlighted transactions. $18,000. Gone. I'd been carrying that knowledge through vendor check-ins and seating arrangements and a 45-minute call about centerpiece heights. I hadn't confronted anyone yet. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Sitting in that chair, I thought, maybe this. Maybe I was waiting for this exact moment to understand without any doubt what I was dealing with. Inside my clutch were 2 folded pieces of paper. I hadn't planned to use them tonight, but plans change. 6 weeks before the party, I was standing on the stone terrace of Harrow Estate measuring tent placement for a June wedding. It had rained overnight. I'd walked those steps dozens of times. I wasn't rushing. I was being careful. My left foot slid anyway. I heard the crack before the pain registered. The ER doctor called it a complex fracture. The orthopedic surgeon called it reconstructive. He said the word 3 times. I think he was trying to give me time to absorb it. 8 weeks non-weight bearing, 3 to 6 months of physical therapy. If you want full function back, he said, you need the structured program. Home exercises alone won't get you there. Full function. My career is full function. I'm not desk-bound. I run 12-hour days on concrete floors, in loading docks, in outdoor venues where the ground is never entirely level. I fix problems in motion. From the recovery room, still groggy from anesthesia, I called my mom. I broke my ankle, I said. They had to put in hardware. A pause. So you can still handle the anniversary party? It's in 6 weeks. I stared at the ceiling tiles. Yeah, I said. I'll figure it out. I always say yes. It's not a virtue, it's a habit I've never examined closely enough. 3 years ago, my parents were 3 months behind on rent, facing eviction. I bought their condo. $87,000, everything I'd saved in a decade. I put the deed in my name, set their rent at $400 a month. Market rate was $1,400. They called me generous. They called me a blessing. They paid on time exactly once. I also opened a joint savings account with my father, emergency access only. I funded it with $22,000. It was supposed to be a safety net, in case something happened to me or to them. I should have thought more carefully about what emergency meant to different people. Brent is 38. 2 DUIs, 4 evictions, jobs that last until they don't. Warehouse, car wash, landscaping crew, a restaurant where he was caught pocketing tips after 11 days. Every collapse followed the same pattern. My mother would call, "He's your brother, family helps family," and I would help. 200 here, 800 there, 3,000 for bail. Last fall, my mom called about a water heater. "It's shot," she said. "We'll freeze." I transferred $3,200 within the hour. 2 weeks later, my father casually mentioned the water heater had been fine all winter. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was probably a miscommunication. I was still in a walking boot, scheduling vendor calls from my couch. I didn't have the bandwidth to a confrontation I wasn't sure I could finish. So I asked Rachel to look at the accounts. Rachel has been my friend since college. She's an accountant. She agreed, and then she said, "Promise me you'll actually look at what I find, not just file it away." I promised. 3 days before the party, she called. Her voice was careful, not panicked, just careful. She said they withdrew $18,000. I went still. 4 transactions, all signed by your dad. She read the dates out loud. March 2nd, March 14th, March 29th, April 8th. I called the bank. Every withdrawal was legal. My father's name was on the account. No fraud, no recourse, just permission I had given him. Rachel cross-referenced the dates with records I'd forwarded her. The March 14th withdrawal matched the date Brent's truck was repossessed. Another matched a county clerk payment, his second DUI fine. I sat at my kitchen table with my walking boot propped on a chair and stared at my laptop screen for a long time. That money was supposed to cover my physical therapy. Without it, without the structured program my surgeon recommended, my recovery would be incomplete. A permanent reduction in range of motion, a limp I'd carry into every venue walkthrough, every 12-hour event day for the rest of my career. I called my mother. "The savings account," I said. $18,000. A pause. "We borrowed it," she said. "We were going to tell you. It's been 2 months." Brent needed help. He always needs help. "You're being dramatic." Her voice had that particular flatness that means the conversation is over for her, even if I'm still talking. "Don't ruin the party over this." There it was. The party. I hung up and opened my laptop. I pulled up the lease agreement for the condo. Renewal date, April 30th. I printed the non-renewal notice, folded it, set it on my kitchen table, sat with it for a long time. For 10 years, every emergency had ended the same way, with me writing a check and swallowing whatever I felt after. I had a whole practiced routine for it. Acknowledge, absorb, move on, don't make things harder for everyone else. But this was different. This wasn't money I could replace easily. This was the difference between full recovery and permanent damage, between keeping my business and watching it erode. I thought about what Rachel had said. Promise me you'll actually look at what I find. I looked. I folded the non-renewal notice into thirds and slipped it into my clutch. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with it, but I wanted it close. By the time the salads were cleared, my ankle had gone from sharp pain to a deep, grinding ache. Not better, just different. I was still on the folding chair against the cinder block wall. I'd shifted position twice, trying to find something that didn't put pressure on the wrong spot. There wasn't one. Aunt Donna had glanced over at me twice with an expression I couldn't read, something between sympathy and discomfort, like she wanted to say something but didn't know what. No one offered me their seat. I hadn't expected them to, exactly, but I noticed. At the head table, my mother leaned toward the DJ. "Let's do the toast." My father stood. He's always been good at this. The controlled emotion, the meaningful pause, the voice that sounds like it's just arriving at a feeling rather than performing one. 40 years, he began. 40 years of loyalty, of putting family first. A few guests murmured. Someone clinked a glass. We didn't always have much, but we had each other, and we raised our kids to understand what family means, to support each other. He lifted his glass toward Brent. My brother grinned and raised his beer. My father's gaze moved across the room without landing anywhere specific. I watched him from the wall. Support each other. I thought about 4 highlighted transactions on a bank statement. Applause followed, warm, genuine sounding. Then my mother stood. She looked radiant, cream silk dress, pearls. The lighting was exactly what she'd asked for. I'd specified it in the vendor brief. She spoke about commitment, about handling things privately, about protecting each other. Then, almost as an afterthought, and none of this would have been possible without our daughter. She planned this whole evening, even with her little accident. Little accident. A ripple of sympathetic smiles. A few people turned to look for me. "Stand up, honey," my mother called. I was already sitting against a wall, 15 feet from the table. A few guests near me registered this. Their smiles shifted into something uncertain. My mother didn't notice. She was already moving on. I hadn't planned to say anything. That's the honest version of this story. There was no pre-prepared speech. I hadn't rehearsed anything. I'd been sitting against a wall for 90 minutes with a bank statement in my head and 2 folded papers in my clutch, and I was tired. When the microphone was passed back to the DJ, I heard my own voice before I'd consciously decided to use it. "Can I say something?" It came out quieter than I intended. A few people near me looked over. My father, still standing, paused. My mother looked at me with an expression I know well, the slight narrowing that means please don't. There was a moment where someone at the head table could have redirected things, moved the microphone to the DJ, started the music, called for dessert. Nobody did. I think they were curious, or uncomfortable, or just frozen. My father, after a beat, said, "Go ahead." Someone relayed the microphone down the table to Tiffany, then to Brent, who passed it without looking at me, then to the edge of the table. I had to stand to reach it. My crutch slipped on the hardwood and I grabbed the wall. A few people started to stand. I waved them off. When I finally had the microphone, my heart was going fast. I want to be honest about that. I wasn't calm, I wasn't composed. My hands were shaking slightly and my ankle was screaming, and I had no idea what I was going to say. What I said was this: I just want to... I stopped, cleared my throat. Sorry, I want to say that 40 years is a real commitment, and commitment means something. It means honoring agreements. I could hear how stilted it sounded. This was not a great speech. I planned this party, I said, and I'm glad I could do it, but I've been sitting against that wall for 2 hours on a surgically reconstructed ankle, and I want to be honest about something. My mother's smile had gone very still. The money I needed for physical therapy is gone. $18,000 from the emergency account I set up. It went to cover Brent's fines and debts, and I found out 3 days ago. Someone near the back said, "Oh." Just that. "Oh," like a small exhale. Brent pushed his chair back. "I'm not saying this to ruin anything," I said. My voice was getting unsteady and I hated it. I don't want to pretend tonight didn't happen. All of it. I don't want to go home and act like everything is fine. I put the microphone down on the nearest table because I didn't trust my hand not to shake. Nobody clapped. Nobody gasped dramatically. What happened was more uncomfortable than that. Half the room tried very hard not to look at the head table. The other half stared directly at it. The DJ lowered the music another notch. A server carrying a tray of desserts stopped in the doorway, read the room, and retreated. My father set down his fork. Brent stared at the tablecloth. My mother picked up her wine glass, put it down without drinking. Aunt Donna said, very quietly, "Maybe we should take a break." That was it. No dramatic confrontation, just the particular excruciating silence of a room full of people who have just watched something private become public and don't know what to do with it. I sat back down on my folding chair. My ankle was throbbing. I was shaking slightly. I didn't feel powerful. I felt exposed and exhausted and like I might have just made everything worse. But I also felt, and this took me a few days to understand, present. Like I had finally been in the room instead of just managing it. The papers were still in my clutch. I didn't take them out that night. The rest of the party was not cinematic. The music came back on, softer. People gradually returned to conversations, the way you return to a meal after someone's phone rings too loud. Stilted at first, then quieter than before. Brent left early. He said he was tired. No one challenged this. My father came and found me near the exit around 9:30. He didn't sit down. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "That wasn't the right place," he said. "No," I agreed. "Probably not." He looked like he wanted to say something else. He didn't. My mother came over after the last guests had left, while the catering staff was breaking down tables. She helped me into my coat without asking. "We need to talk," she said. "I know. Not tonight." Okay. That was the whole conversation. 3 days after the party, I drove to the condo. I brought the non-renewal notice. I also brought the bank statement highlighted. My mother made tea. My father sat across the table and looked at his hands. I put the bank statement on the table. He didn't deny it. That was something, I suppose. "I was going to tell you," he said. "When?" He didn't answer. "I needed the physical therapy," I said. "You knew that. I told you what the surgeon said." Brent was in a bad place. Brent is always in a bad place. I didn't say it harshly, just factually. He's been in a bad place for 15 years, and every time it costs me something. My mother wrapped both hands around her mug. "You make more than we do." "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" I thought about how to answer that honestly. "It's about not being asked," I said. It's about you taking money from an account labeled emergency and using it to cover consequences that Brent should have been covering himself and not telling me for 2 months. My mother looked at the table. "We didn't think you'd notice," he said. Then, almost immediately, "That came out wrong." "No," I said. "I think he came out right." I put the non-renewal notice on the table beside the bank statement. My mother read it without touching it. "You can't be serious," she said. "I am." "Where are we supposed to go?" "You'll have 45 days. I'll waive the final month's rent." My father's jaw worked. "After everything?" "I know," I said quietly. "I know you think I'm ungrateful or overreacting or being dramatic." That word again. "But I bought this condo with every dollar I had saved. I set your rent below market rate for 3 years. I funded your anniversary party from a hospital couch. And then you took money from my medical recovery without telling me." The silence that followed wasn't the clean, definitive kind. It was uncomfortable and messy, and all 3 of us were in it together. Finally, my mother said, "Brent needed help." "He always does," I said. "But you chose him over my recovery, and I can't pretend that didn't happen." I left the papers on the table. I drove home and sat in my car in the parking garage for a while before going inside. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt wrung out, like I'd had a tooth pulled, relieved and sore and slightly disoriented. But I also felt like I had finally told the truth to the right people. That was worth something. It's enough time and not enough time, depending on what you're moving. My parents didn't take the notice well. Then they did, then they didn't again. The first week, my father called twice to say I was overreacting. My mother sent a text that was 3 paragraphs long and contained the phrase, "after everything we sacrificed." I read it twice and didn't respond immediately, which I think was the right call. The second week was quieter. I started physical therapy. The therapist, a practical woman who didn't offer sympathy she hadn't earned, bent my ankle and watched my face. "You delayed," she said. "Yes." "By how much?" 6 weeks, give or take. She made a note. "We'll see what we're working with." It was harder than I expected and slower than I hoped. Some sessions I left feeling like I'd made progress. Others I drove home with my boot back on and my jaw clenched, not sure I'd made any progress at all. But I went. Every session, twice a week, then 3 times as I got more weight-bearing clearance. Consistency, it turned out, was not just a virtue, it was a treatment. On day 18, my mother called. "We found a 2-bedroom, she said. The defensiveness in her voice had settled into something tireder. "It's smaller, more expensive." "That makes sense," I said. A pause. "Are you really not going to reconsider?" "No." Another pause. "Your father thinks—" She stopped. "Never mind what your father thinks." That was the closest she came to a concession. I didn't push it. Brent called once. I let it go to voicemail. He said he thought I was punishing everyone for his mistakes, which was unfair. He said he would have paid it back. He said I had always had a way of making him feel like a failure. I listened to the message twice. Then I called him back. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I am protecting myself. Those are different things." He said, "It doesn't feel different." "I know," I said, "but it is." He hung up. We haven't talked since. I'm not sure where we'll land. I'm not sure where I want us to land. On day 45, I walked through the condo. My parents were mostly packed, boxes stacked in the living room. The walls looked bare without the pictures. My mother was in the kitchen wrapping dishes in newspaper. She looked older, which I noticed and felt guilty for noticing. "You embarrassed us," she said, without looking up. "I know." She kept wrapping. "But I understand why you did it." It wasn't an apology, it wasn't absolution, but it was the first time she had said something that acknowledged my side of it, and I wasn't going to dismiss it just because it was incomplete. "Mom, I don't want this to be the end of everything." She looked up. "It doesn't have to be," she said. We didn't hug, we didn't cry. We stood in a half-packed kitchen and acknowledged that something had broken and we weren't sure yet what would grow back. That's the honest version of reconciliation. It's not a moment, it's a direction. On day 45, I handed my father the final paperwork. He signed without comment. They loaded the truck. My father shook my hand, which surprised me. My mother kissed my cheek and then walked quickly to the passenger seat. I watched the truck turn the corner at the end of the street. I stood in the driveway until I couldn't hear the engine anymore. I listed the condo at market rate. It took 3 weeks to find a tenant, not 2. The first applicant fell through. The second backed out after the inspection turned up a minor plumbing issue I had to fix. The third worked out. It covered most of my physical therapy, not all of it. I paid the rest from savings. By month 4, I could walk without the boot on good days. By month 6, I could stand through a full event day. The first wedding I ran at full capacity was a mess. Florist ran late, the groom's family had a conflict at the rehearsal, and it rained during the outdoor ceremony. All normal, all fixable. I fixed it. My parents and I talk. Less than before, differently than before. Brent got a job in a warehouse 2 towns over, my father mentioned. I said that was good. I meant it. My mother sent me a card for my birthday. Inside, in her handwriting, I hope you're walking well. I am. Not perfectly. There are days my ankle reminds me what happened, a particular weather pattern, a long shift on uneven ground. My surgeon says that's normal, that it may always be there, a little. I've made a kind of peace with that. Some things, once broken, don't go back to exactly what they were. They go back to something functional, something that holds weight. Sometimes, if you're lucky, something stronger. When I plan events now, I still double-check every seating chart, every name, every placement, and I always make sure I know where my own seat is.